She got a falling-apart castle covered in green moss that everyone in town called worthless junk. But when the expert's hand started shaking as he looked at the stones at the bottom, she knew her late uncle's joke gift was about to change everything. Before we dive into this incredible story, make sure to smash subscribe because tomorrow we have an extra special story for you that will blow your mind. The lawyer's office smelled like old leather and sadness. I sat across from Mr. Harrison, watching his thin lips move as he read my Uncle Theodore's will for the third time. Like maybe the words would change if he looked harder. My name is Sarah Brennan, and until that moment, most of my family didn't notice me. The single mother who worked 2 jobs at the restaurant. The one who couldn't afford a nice car. The one they whispered about at Christmas dinners I was rarely invited to. Miss Brennan, Mr. Harrison finally said, sliding a brass key across the fancy wooden desk. Your uncle has left you Thornfield Castle. I almost laughed. A castle? Me? The woman who had to choose between buying food and buying gas last week. There must be some mistake, I said, not touching the key. Uncle Theodore barely knew me. We talked maybe 3 times in my whole life. The lawyer adjusted his wire-rimmed glasses. No mistake. He was very clear. The castle, the land, and whatever is inside. All yours. What about his children? My cousins. They've been taken care of in other ways. His tone suggested they'd been given a lot of money somewhere else. I picked up the key. It was heavier than I expected. Fancy and cold. Where exactly is this castle? Northern Maine, about 4 hours from here. I should warn you. He paused, choosing his words carefully. The property has been empty for nearly 40 years. Your uncle never lived there. Never even visited as far as we know. That night, I sat at our tiny kitchen table, watching my 8-year-old daughter Emma finish her homework. The apartment was small. Just 2 rooms and a bathroom that leaked when the upstairs neighbor took a shower. But it was ours and we'd made it work for 3 years since her father left. Mom, Emma looked up, pencil in hand. You've been staring at that key forever. I smiled. Just thinking, baby, about what? About whether a moss-covered castle in the middle of nowhere was worth the gas money to go see. About whether this was some mean joke from a family that had never wanted anything to do with us. About whether I should hope for something more than just surviving. About maybe taking a little adventure, I said finally. Emma's eyes lit up. Like in the stories? With castles and everything? Yeah, I said, closing my hand around the key. Exactly like in the stories. That weekend, we loaded up my beat-up Honda with sandwiches, blankets, and more hope than common sense. Emma had packed her exploration kit, a flashlight, her notebook, and a disposable camera she'd gotten for her birthday. She pressed her face against the window as we drove north, watching the view change from city to thick forest. Are we really going to live in a castle? She asked for the 10th time. We're just going to look, I said, though part of me was already imagining more. A fresh start, a place where the whispers couldn't follow. Maybe even a home that felt like home. The roads got narrower the farther north we went. GPS gave up somewhere around mile marker 47, leaving us with hand-drawn directions from Mr. Harrison. Turn left at the lightning-struck oak tree. Follow the stone wall for 2 miles. Look for the iron gates. When we finally found them, I understood why no one talked about Thornfield Castle anymore. The gates hung open, one side completely off its hinges. Beyond them, a dirt road disappeared into a tunnel of overgrown trees. Everything was green. Not the bright green of spring, but the deep, dark green of things left alone too long. Mom, Emma's voice was smaller now. It looked scary. I reached back and squeezed her hand. The best adventures usually do. We drove slowly, branches scraping against the car like fingernails. The road curved and climbed, and just when I thought we'd made a terrible mistake, the trees opened up. There it was. Thornfield Castle rose from the ground like something out of a fairy tale. If fairy tales included many years of no care. Moss covered every stone surface in a thick green coat. Ivy had taken over the walls, growing so thick it looked like the castle was wearing a living coat. The windows were dark, empty eyes staring out at nothing, but the structure was there. Strong stone walls, multiple towers reaching toward the gray Maine sky. Architecture that belonged in Europe, not hidden in the American wilderness. Whoa, Emma breathed. It's real. I parked in what used to be a circular driveway, now cracked and growing with weeds. We got out slowly, like we might wake something up. The front door was huge, solid oak made stronger with iron. The key slid in like it had been waiting, and the lock turned with a groan that echoed through the entrance hall. Inside, dust danced in rays of light from holes in the roof. The floor was stone, covered in junk and dead leaves. A grand staircase curved up into darkness, its railing thick with spider webs. "Hello," I called out, immediately feeling silly. Who was I expecting to answer? Emma tugged on my jacket. Look, Mom, she was pointing at the walls. Underneath the dirt, I could make out paintings on the walls, faded but still visible. Hunting scenes, star maps, gardens that might have once been paradise. We explored room by room, Emma's fear replaced by wonder. The castle was huge. 3 stories, not counting whatever was in the towers. Most rooms were empty, but some still held furniture covered in sheets, like ghosts of a life stopped. In what must have been the library, books lined the walls floor to ceiling. Most were ruined by water, but some on higher shelves looked like they could be saved. Emma ran her finger along the spines, leaving trails in the dust. Why would someone just leave all this? She asked. I didn't have an answer. The leaving felt on purpose, like everyone had walked out one day and decided not to come back. We were heading back to the entrance when I noticed it. A door I'd missed before, smaller than the others, tucked behind a moldy wall hanging. It was locked, but not with rust or old age. The lock was new, modern, completely out of place. The fancy key didn't fit. I tried every other key on my keychain, but nothing worked. What's in there? Emma asked. I don't know, I said. But something cold settled in my stomach. Everything else in the castle was open, left behind, forgotten. Why lock just one door? As the sun started setting, painting the stone walls gold and shadow, we headed back outside. Emma had filled her notebook with sketches, doorways, carvings, the view from a broken window. I sat on the hood of the car, trying to process it all. A castle, an actual castle. Mine, but also a ruin. A money pit. A responsibility I couldn't possibly handle. The roof alone would cost more than I'd make in 5 years. The windows, the plumbing, the heating, if it even had heating, and that was assuming the structure was good, which seemed hopeful given the small trees growing from some of the towers. Mom, Emma climbed up beside me. Are you sad? No, baby. Just thinking. About what? About how sometimes gifts come with price tags attached. She leaned against me, her small body warm in the cooling air. I think it's beautiful. You do? Yeah, it's like Sleeping Beauty's castle, but sadder. Like it's waiting for someone to wake it up. I kissed the top of her head, breathing in her strawberry shampoo. 8 years old, and she saw magic where I saw impossibility. That's when we heard the car. The sound of an engine echoed off the stone walls, getting closer. Headlights swept across the courtyard as a black Mercedes pulled up beside our Honda. The difference was almost funny. My duct-taped bumper next to all that expensive German engineering. A man got out. Tall, silver-haired, wearing a suit that probably cost more than my car. He looked at us, then at the castle, then back at us. Miss Brennan? I slid off the hood, pushing Emma behind me by instinct. Yes, my name is Richard Worthington. I represent someone very interested in this property. He pulled out a business card. Expensive cardstock with raised lettering. We'd like to make you an offer. I literally just got here, I said. How did you even know? News travels fast in certain circles, he said smoothly. Thornfield Castle has been watched for a very long time. Many people are interested in what might be hidden inside its walls. Hidden, there was that word again, like the locked door that didn't fit with the rest of the emptiness. I'm not looking to sell, I said, surprising myself with the firmness in my voice. His smile didn't change. I think when you hear our offer, you might reconsider. Shall we say $500,000 cash? No inspections, no questions. Emma gasped behind me. I felt my own breath catch. $500,000. Enough to change everything. Enough for a real house, a college fund, a life without choosing between food and gas. Why? I asked. Why would anyone pay that much for this? What happens next will show family secrets buried for many years, treasures beyond imagination, and remind us why sometimes the most laughed at inheritances become the most valuable. Stay tuned to see what happens next. If you're enjoying the story, please like, share, and subscribe for more. Mr. Worthington's smile got tighter. Let's say we're collectors of historical properties. Thornfield has quite a unique history. What kind of history? The kind that's worth preserving, or perhaps keeping contained. There was something in the way he said keeping contained that made my skin crawl. I pulled Emma closer. I'll think about it, I said. He reached into his jacket and I tensed, but he only pulled out another card, my cell phone. Call anytime, day or night. But Miss Brennan... He looked directly at me, his gray eyes cold. Don't wait too long. Properties like this, they can be dangerous for those who don't understand what they mean. He got back in his Mercedes and drove away, leaving us in the growing darkness. Mom, Emma whispered. I don't like him. Me neither, baby. We drove back to town and found a cheap motel. Emma fell asleep quickly, exhausted from exploring, but I lay awake, staring at the water-stained ceiling. $500,000. It would solve everything, but Worthington's warning echoed in my head. Dangerous for those who don't understand what they mean. What meaning? What was I missing? The next morning I left Emma with the motel's breakfast food and drove to the town library. It was small. Just 2 rooms, but the librarian, a woman old enough to remember when Thornfield was lived in, perked up when I mentioned the castle. "Oh my," she said, adjusting her glasses. "No one's asked about that place in years. Let me see what we have." She returned with a box of yellowed newspaper clippings and faded photographs. I spread them on the reading table, putting together a story I'd never heard. Thornfield Castle hadn't been built by some eccentric millionaire. It had been moved. In 1924, my great-great-grandfather, Cornelius Brennan, had bought an entire castle in Scotland, stone by stone, and had it shipped to Maine and rebuilt. The newspaper called it Brennan's Folly, a monument to waste that had nearly made the family broke. But that wasn't the interesting part. The interesting part was what happened in 1943. The castle had been used by the government during World War II. The articles were unclear, mentioning only scientific research and matters of national security. Then suddenly nothing. No more mentions. Like Thornfield had simply stopped existing. "Your family owned that place?" the librarian asked, reading over my shoulder. "Apparently, though this is the first I'm hearing of it." She made a humming sound. "Families sometimes bury things they'd rather forget, especially rich families, especially during wartime." I photocopied everything and drove back to the motel, mind racing. Emma was in the small pool, splashing with another kid, so I sat at a rusty picnic table and called Mr. Harrison. "The castle," I said without introduction. "What do you know about its history?" He sighed. "I was wondering when you'd ask. Your uncle was very specific. I was to tell you only if you asked directly." "Tell me what?" "That Thornfield Castle holds the answer to why the Brennan fortune disappeared. Your uncle spent 40 years trying to get into one particular room. He believed your great-great-grandfather hid something there before the government took control of the property." My heart started pounding. "The locked room behind the wall hanging." "You found it." His voice got sharper. "Your uncle died believing he was the only one who knew it existed. What's in it? Nobody knows. Cornelius Brennan was many things. An inventor, an art collector. Some say a genius. Others say crazy. Before the government took Thornfield, he claimed to have hidden his greatest treasure, where only a true Brennan would think to look.
Many have tried to find it. Your uncle bought the castle hoping to succeed where others failed, but he never even visited. No, he was afraid. Some of the family believed there was a curse. Silly, of course, but your uncle was superstitious.
He thought if he waited, if he passed it to the right person. Why me?" I interrupted. "He didn't even know me." Mr. Harrison was quiet for a moment. "He knew more than you think. He knew you were raising a daughter alone. He knew you worked hard and never asked the family for anything, even when you had every right to. He said you were the only Brennan left who understood the value of never giving up." I ended the call and sat watching Emma play, my mind spinning. A locked room, a hidden treasure, a castle that the government had taken for mysterious wartime research. It sounded like something out of a movie. Not my life. But that key in my pocket was real. The moss-covered castle was real. And Richard Worthington's offer and warning were very real. That afternoon I made a decision that would have seemed crazy a week ago. I called my boss at the restaurant and quit. I emptied my savings account, all $847 of it, and I packed everything we owned into the Honda. "Where are we going?" Emma asked, holding her stuffed rabbit. "Home," I said, surprising myself. "We're going home." We moved into Thornfield Castle on a Tuesday. It sounds grander than it was. We set up camp in the one room where the roof didn't leak, the old kitchen with its huge fireplace. Our sleeping bags looked silly on the stone floor, like we were camping in a museum. The first night, every sound echoed. Wind whistled through broken windows. Somewhere in the walls, things scurried and scratched. Emma crawled into my sleeping bag, and we lay there listening to our new home settling around us. "Are you sure about this?" she whispered. "No," I admitted. "But sometimes the best things happen when you're not sure." By morning, I had a plan, or at least the beginning of one. I couldn't fix the whole castle. That would take millions I didn't have, but I could make parts of it livable. I could solve the mystery of the locked room, and maybe, just maybe, I could prove that Sarah Brennan, the single mom everyone had written off, was exactly where she was supposed to be. I started with the basics. A man from town helped me patch the worst of the roof leaks in exchange for some hauling work I did with the Honda. The local builder, interested in the castle, gave me a deal on some windows, mostly because he wanted to see inside. "This stonework," he said, running his hand along the wall. "You don't see skill like this anymore. These walls will outlast us all." Word spread, as it does in small towns. The single mother living in the castle. Some came to stare, others to laugh. I heard the whispers at the grocery store, saw the smirks. "Brennan's Folly," they called it. just like the newspapers had 100 years ago. But Emma and I didn't care. We were too busy discovering our new home. Secret passages that connected rooms, a food elevator that still worked if you pulled hard enough, stone carvings hidden under centuries of dirt, faces, flowers, symbols I didn't recognize. And always I came back to that locked door. I tried everything. Crowbars bent against it. The lockpicker I hired took one look and shook his head. "That's not just a lock," he said. "That's a puzzle. See these markings around the keyhole? They mean something." I spent hours studying those markings by flashlight. They looked like stars, or maybe flowers. 8 points. Beautifully carved. Familiar, but I couldn't figure out why. 3 weeks into our castle life, the scary stuff started. First, it was just cars driving by slowly at night, headlights sweeping across our windows. Then I found footprints in the mud outside, circling the castle. Someone had been looking for another way in. I installed motion sensors. Cheap ones from the hardware store, but better than nothing. I kept my phone charged and ready, and I started, carrying the pepper spray I'd bought years ago but never used. The second time Richard Worthington showed up, he wasn't alone. 3 men came with him, all wearing suits that didn't quite hide the bulge of guns in shoulder holsters. "Miss Brennan," he said pleasantly, like we were old friends. "How are you settling in?" "Fine," I said. Emma was upstairs doing homework, and I was grateful she couldn't see the tough men studying our home like they were memorizing every entrance. I thought I'd renew my offer. $1 million. More than generous for a property in this condition. I crossed my arms. "Why do you want it so badly?" His smile never changed. "Let's say I'm a history enthusiast. This castle has such interesting stories." "Like what?" "Oh, the usual. Illegal alcohol in the 20s. Those wartime experiments. Did you know they tested radar technology here? And of course, the legend of Cornelius Brennan's hidden treasure. Though between us," he leaned in like sharing a secret, "I think that's just a fairy tale, don't you?" I kept my face blank. "Probably. Still, legends have a way of causing trouble. People get obsessed. They take risks. Sometimes people get hurt." His eyes got hard, especially single mothers with no one to protect them. "Is that a threat?" "Advice. From someone who's seen how these situations can get worse. Take the money, Miss Brennan. Start fresh somewhere safe, somewhere else." After they left, I sat on the kitchen floor, shaking. $1 million. Safety for Emma. A life without looking over my shoulder. But then I remembered my uncle's words. Passed through the lawyer. The only Brennan left who understood the value of never giving up. That night, I dreamed about the markings on the locked door. 8 points. Like stars, like flowers, like a compass rose. I woke with a gasp. Emma stirred beside me. She'd been having nightmares since Worthington's visit. "Go back to sleep, baby," I whispered. But my mind was racing. A compass rose, of course. Cornelius Brennan had been obsessed with navigation, with finding true north. What if the lock wasn't just a lock? What if it was waiting for the right key, positioned the right way? I slipped out of the sleeping bag and crept through the castle to the locked door by flashlight. I studied the keyhole again. There, barely visible, a tiny carved N at what would be the north position, but I didn't have a key that fit. I'd tried everything on my keychain, everything I'd found in the castle, unless, back in the kitchen, I pulled out the fancy key that had opened the front door. It was too big for the locked room. I'd already tried. But what if I'd been looking at it wrong? The key's handle was decorated with the Brennan family crest. At its center, almost worn smooth, was another compass rose. I'd thought it was just decoration. I ran back to the locked door, heart pounding. The key still didn't fit. But wait, there at the bottom of the handle, a line I'd never noticed. I pressed the compass rose and twisted. The handle separated from the shaft, showing a smaller key hidden inside. "Only a true Brennan would think to look," I whispered. The hidden key slid into the lock perfectly. I lined up the compass points, north to north, and turned. The lock opened with a click that seemed to echo through time. The door swung inward, and stale air rushed out, carrying the smell of old paper and something else, machine oil. I stepped inside, flashlight beam sweeping across what lay beyond. It wasn't a room. It was a vault. Filing cabinets lined one wall, tables covered in documents, maps, and photographs. And in the center, under a dusty tarp, shapes that made my breath catch. I pulled back the tarp and nearly dropped the flashlight. Paintings. At least a dozen. Even in the harsh beam of the flashlight, I could see they were masterpieces. The colors, the brushwork, these weren't prints or copies. They were real. My hands shook as I moved to the filing cabinets. The first drawer I opened was full of certificates, history papers, proof documents. Names jumped out at me. Monet, Renoir, a small Rembrandt sketch. But it was the second drawer that made me sink to my knees. Government contracts, classified stamps, and page after page describing Operation Safeguard, a World War II program where private collectors had hidden valuable artworks to prevent them from being taken by the Nazis if America fell. Thornfield Castle had been a secret storage place, and Cornelius Brennan hadn't just been hiding art, he'd been protecting it. For museums, private collectors, even European families running from the war had ended. The art should have been returned. But according to the final entries, Cornelius had discovered something. Several pieces in his care had been stolen by the Nazis from Jewish families. The supposed owners claiming them after the war were traitors, thieves trying to profit from tragedy. Cornelius had refused to return those pieces, and when the government tried to force him, he'd hidden them where only a true Brennan would think to look. I sat there in the beam of my flashlight, surrounded by treasures that museums would kill for, finally understanding why Worthington wanted this castle so badly. Why men with guns had measured our entrances. Some of these paintings belonged to families destroyed in the Holocaust. Some belonged to museums. And some, according to Cornelius's careful notes, belonged to no one anymore. Their entire families erased. I heard a sound behind me and spun, but it was only Emma rubbing sleepy eyes. "Mom, what is this place?" I pulled her close, kissing her forehead. "It's complicated, baby." She looked around with wonder. "Are these real?" "Yeah, they're real." "Are we rich now?" I laughed, surprising myself. "I don't know, maybe." "But Emma," I turned her to face me, "these aren't really ours. Our great-great-grandfather was protecting them for people. Some of those people are gone now, but that doesn't mean we get to keep them." She nodded seriously. "So what do we do?" "The right thing," I said, though I wasn't entirely sure what that was yet. We spent the rest of the night in the vault, going through papers by flashlight. Emma curled up on my lap, occasionally asking questions. I found letters from families thanking Cornelius for protecting their heritage, photographs of artwork being packed, hidden, saved. A whole secret history of saving and resistance. By dawn, I had a plan. First, I called a lawyer, not Mr. Harrison, but someone who specialized in art return. She nearly choked when I described what I'd found. "Don't tell anyone else," she said urgently. "I'm driving up today. And Miss Brennan, consider hiring security." "What you're describing, there are people who would kill for it." Next, I called the FBI's Art Crime Division. The agent who answered sounded bored until I mentioned Thornfield Castle and Operation Safeguard. Then he was all business. "We'll have agents there this afternoon. Do not leave the property. Do not let anyone else in." But the afternoon wasn't soon enough. I was making Emma lunch when I heard engines. Not cars this time, but motorcycles. 4 of them roaring up our overgrown driveway. I pushed Emma toward the stairs. "Go to the tower room and lock the door," I said. "Don't come out until I call you, Mom. Go!" She ran, and I grabbed the baseball bat I'd been keeping by the door. Not much against whatever was coming, but better than nothing. The motorcycles circled the courtyard like predators before finally stopping. Men got off, pulling off helmets to show faces that didn't match the expensive bikes. These weren't fun riders. These were Worthington's men, done with pretending. I stood in the doorway, bat in hand, trying to look braver than I felt. "This is private property," the lead man smiled. "Won't be for long. Mr. Worthington's offer expired. Now we're just taking what should have been ours anyway. It's not yours. Those paintings, they were bought and paid for. We have the contracts. Fake contracts from traitors and thieves." His smile faded. "Doesn't matter now. Move aside." "No." He pulled out a gun, casual as checking his watch. I wasn't really asking. That's when we heard the sirens, not just 1 or 2. A symphony of them, growing louder. The man's head snapped toward the sound, then back to me. "What did you do?" I smiled. "Called some friends." The FBI arrived like cavalry. Cars skidding into the courtyard. Agents in tactical gear surrounding the motorcycles before Worthington's men could get back on. The lead man dropped his gun, hands rising in surrender. I sat down hard on the stone steps, adrenaline making my legs shake. One of the agents approached, badge out. "Miss Brennan, we need to secure the vault." I nodded, handing him the hidden key. "Second floor, behind the wall hanging. The doors open." As they worked, I called up to Emma. She came flying down the stairs and into my arms, both of us crying with relief. "Are we safe now?" she asked. "Yeah, baby, we're safe." But safety, I was learning, was a relative thing when you're sitting on $45 million in contested art. The news broke like a bomb. Single mother discovers hidden Nazi. Loot, castle secret, millions in missing. Masterpieces, 45I. Million art treasure found in Maine. They got parts of it wrong, of course. The art wasn't Nazi loot. It had been saved from the Nazis, but the media loved the story of a struggling single mom inheriting a castle and finding treasure. They camped outside our gates. Emma and I stopped going into town. The legal battle started right away. Museums claimed pieces. Families came forward with papers. Worthington Industries, shown to be a fake company buying stolen art for private collectors, faced federal charges. But in the chaos, beautiful things happened too. An elderly woman flew in from Paris. Her grandfather had painted one of the watercolors in our vault. She'd thought it was lost forever. When I handed it to her, she cried and called me an angel in broken English. A museum in Poland sent a group, the small Rembrandt sketch. It had been stolen from their collection in 1941. They'd given up hope of ever seeing it again. For each piece we could trace, there was joy, art going home. Families reunited with their heritage. Justice many years late, but finally served. The proving process took months. Experts came and went. The vault's contents were listed, researched, debated. Emma and I continued camping in our kitchen, the castle around us crawling with federal agents and art historians. Mr. Harrison helped navigate the legal maze. As it turned out, I did own some of the pieces, the ones Cornelius had bought legally before the war. The rest would be returned to their rightful owners. But there were finder's fees, insurance rewards, and a grateful French government that insisted on paying for the storage and protection of their national treasures. When the dust settled, the castle was mine, free and clear, with enough money to fix it properly. More than enough. $5 million after taxes and fees, Mr. Harrison said, sliding the paperwork across his desk, plus the 7 paintings that were legally yours to keep, valued at approximately $6 million. You're not castle rich, Miss Brennan. You're actually rich. I stared at the numbers until they blurred. Emma, sitting beside me, squeezed my hand. We can fix the roof now? She asked hopefully. I laughed, pulling her close. Yeah, baby. We can fix everything. But first, there was something else to fix. I drove to the cemetery where Uncle Theodore was buried. I'd never visited. Hadn't seen the point when he was alive. Felt guilty doing it after he died. But now I knelt by his headstone, Emma beside me, with flowers we'd picked from the castle grounds. Thank you, I said simply, for believing I could handle this. For seeing something in me I didn't see myself. Emma placed the flowers carefully. He must have been smart, she said. To know you were the right person, maybe, I said. Or maybe he just knew what it was like to be the family outsider. We stood there a while longer. 3 generations of Brennans connected across time and stone. The fixing of Thornfield Castle took 2 years. We hired local builders, putting money back into the community that had laughed at us. The roof was replaced. The windows fixed. The wall paintings cleaned by experts until they glowed like new. Emma and I moved from room to room as each section was completed. From our kitchen campsite to the restored east wing, then finally to the master bedroom with its view of the mountains. Every space we reclaimed felt like victory. The locked room became a museum. Not a public one. We'd had enough of crowds, but a place where scholars could come by appointment to study the documents, to understand how one man had fought to save beauty during the world's ugliest time. On Emma's 10th birthday, we held a party in the Great Hall. Kids from her school ran through rooms that had once echoed with emptiness. Parents who had mocked us now smiled and complimented the restoration. Richard Worthington was serving 5 to 10 years in prison for art trafficking, but the best moment came later, after everyone had gone home. Emma and I sat on the castle's highest balcony, looking out over the forest sea. Mom, she said, remember when everyone laughed at us? Hard to forget. Do you care now that they're not laughing? I thought about it, about the whispers that had followed us, the smirks when I'd quit my job to live in a ruin, the certainty in everyone's eyes that I was making a fool's choice. No, I said finally, because they were looking at what was. We saw what could be. She nodded, satisfied. Like Uncle Theodore. Yeah, I said, pulling her close. Exactly like Uncle Theodore. As the sun set over our castle, because it was ours now, truly ours, I thought about inheritance, how it's never just about what's in the will. It's about what you do with what you're given. The choice to see treasure where others see trash. The courage to stay when everyone says run. Uncle Theodore hadn't just left me a castle. He'd left me a chance to prove that the single mother everyone overlooked could be the one to unlock something extraordinary. And Emma, she'd inherited something too. The knowledge that when the world laughs at your moss-covered dreams, sometimes you just need to find the hidden key. The castle stood strong against the darkening sky. No longer abandoned. No longer a folly. It was home. And in the morning, tour groups would come to see the art we'd saved, to hear the story of saving and never giving up. But tonight it was just us. The Brennan women who everyone had laughed at, until we'd had the last laugh worth $45 million. Upstairs, in what had been the vault, one painting remained, not because we couldn't trace its owner, but because we could. Cornelius Brennan had painted it himself, an amateur's landscape of Thornfield Castle before the moss, before the years. At the bottom, in his careful handwriting, for the Brennan who finds this, You were worth waiting for. I'd had it reframed and hung where the morning light would always find it. A reminder that sometimes the greatest treasures aren't what we find, but who we become while searching. Emma had been right that first day. The castle had been waiting for someone to wake it up. It just took a single mother with nothing to lose and everything to gain to finally turn the key. Up next, 2 more incredible stories about unexpected inheritances and family secrets. Click to discover what other surprises are waiting. And don't forget to hit subscribe to join us for tomorrow's amazing tale.